Look, the most critical thing in our democracy is the ability to govern. I tell the students at the Panetta Institute that in a democracy, we operate either by leadership or by crisis. If leadership is there and willing to take the risks associated with leadership, and make no mistake about it, if you're going to lead in this country, you've got to take risks. You've got to take risks. If you're a businessman, you've got to take risks. That's what leadership's all about. But if that leadership is not there for whatever reason, then we will govern by crisis. And we have largely been a country in recent years that is governed by crisis. You have to have a shutdown of the federal government in order for Congress to try to figure out what to do about the budget. You have to have crisis in other areas in order to drive policy. And the problem with that is you can operate that way as an elected official. It's easy to wait for crisis and not have to do anything to anger your constituents. But ultimately, there is a price to be paid, and the price is you lose the trust of the American people in our system of governing. And I think that's what the 2016 election was all about, was the lack of trust in Washington and the failure of Washington to deal with the issues that were confronting the American people. I haven't seen that improve. In my history, I've seen Washington at its best and Washington at its worst. The good news is I have seen Washington work. When I came back, worked as a legislative assistant to Tom Kuechel, who was a minority whip to Everett Dirksen in the Senate. There were a number of moderate Republicans. They worked with Democrats like Humphrey and Jackson, and Dick Russell. They worked together on issues. Yes, they had their political differences, but they worked together when it came to issues confronting this country. When I got elected to Congress, Tip O'Neill was the Speaker. He's a Democrat's Democrat. But he got along with Bob Michel, who was the minority leader. And did they have their political differences? Of course. But when it came to major issues, they worked together. They were willing to sit down, to negotiate, to respect each other, to develop trust between each other, and to govern the country. That's broken down. That process is broken down. There is no trust. They can't even agree on the facts regarding issues. So there's an unwillingness to sit down and to negotiate and to find compromise and to find consensus. And so you have dysfunction. And it's a dangerous dysfunction. You can't deal with the budget. You can't deal with the debt that's going to become almost over 100% of GDP within these next few years. They're not dealing with immigration. They're not dealing with energy issues. They're not dealing with the whole issue of infrastructure and how to improve infrastructure in this country. They're not dealing with the fundamental issues facing our country. So the concern I have is if that dysfunction continues, then I think along with a president who's beginning to withdraw our leadership from our leadership role in the world, I think that spells a weak America. And that could undermine our democracy for the future.